And turning to some breaking news, we have just learned that a formal lab has confirmed the suspicion that that white powdery substance found in the West Wing on Sunday was in fact positive for cocaine. The discovery led to a brief evacuation of the White House Sunday night. Joining us now is NBC White House correspondent Mike Memoli. So, Mike, where do things stand now? This is so unusual. You and I have covered the White House for years. I can't even fathom anything like this having been found before in the West Wing.
The 2024 Republican presidential primary field is taking shape.
The battle lines are becoming clearer, and so is the field of candidates.
Is the odds-on favorites, if you look at the polling, still Trump versus Biden?
That seems to be it, but it's just way too early to tell.
I'm more angry now, and I'm more committed now than I ever was.
Big challenge for these candidates is going to be how do they navigate Donald Trump? And how do they navigate Ron DeSantis?
You and I have a rendezvous with them.
Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety program. You got Michael Duncan here. No Josh Holmes.
That's right. We're lean, we're mean, and we're going to have a hell of a good episode today. Well, there's a lot to cover.
We're good friends here sitting together, and we miss our pal Josh Holmes, but we're going to do the best we can without him.
Yeah, hopefully we can get it done without him today. We got a lot of news, like Smug said. Obviously, some really great news coming out of the White House here, this cocaine story, which is absolutely wild. If you happen to miss it here from the New York Post, title here is Substance Found in White House West Wing Test Positive for Cocaine.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know who. I'm trying to remember the name of this guy who's got this terrible drug problem who happens to be the son of the president.
And like a couple of days earlier, a news story comes out about them smoking crack, driving 170 miles an hour. Like, is there any sort of a connection here? And but like the blowback from the media immediately was like, don't say this is Hunter Biden's.
Yeah.
Why would you jump to that conclusion?
Yeah,
it's an outrage. You would suggest that a person who wrote a book about their addiction to cocaine.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You would suggest is in possession of cocaine.
I'm sure it was some teacher taking her eighth grade class field trip to the White House was had a little bit of cocaine in her pocket.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sure that's what happened. Everybody takes a little cocaine on the White House tour.
What I thought was funny was the AP headline that just came out a little bit ago. It was suspicious powder found at the White House when Biden was gone was cocaine. They're just absolving.
They can't
this wasn't
help.
Joe Biden. Joe Biden wasn't there. Just so you know, we're doing rapid response for the White House.
Right. Yeah. When the president's gone, guys, you got a little cocaine party. These things happen in the West Wing. What can you do? Unbelievable here. More from the Politico story on the subject. White House cocaine culprit unlikely to be found. Law enforcement official.
I love how they just say that ahead of time. They're like, well, we found cocaine where the Bidens live, and, we're not going to find who's responsible.
Guys, the Washington Post clarifies, their headline is that cocaine was found near where guests enter the White House. So they're shifting the blame, again, away from the Biden family and toward people who are just regular Americans entering the White House.
I've taken a White House tour before. I'm sure you guys have at some point, or you had family in town and you took them there. There's like 3 levels of security to get in there for a base, like a tour, right? Plus, you're going through the machines, you're emptying your pockets. You're telling me they really want us to believe that some tourist came in there and dropped a bag of cocaine.
And also, don't forget, like at the entryway, there's that room where, you've got the dogs in the middle.
Yeah.
That you walk past. How the hell would you get it past the drug and bomb sniffing dog? It seems like you'd have to be someone who can get things in there without the Secret Service always searching them as if they were a guest. You know?
It could be the guy who does 170 miles an hour while smoking crack.
Possibly.
If you want to go ahead and point some fingers, I'd say it probably is that guy. Anyway.
And one quick point. So Tom Fitton sent this tweet out where it was perfectly lays out what's been going on. It says, weird how White House leaks on where the cocaine was found keep on changing. From the library to a, quote, work area to now, quote, near where, quote, guests leave their cell phones. Like, this thing is on the move of where they're trying to, place this. It's going to be like Professor Plum in the library doing lines off a candlestick.
Where guests put their phones, like some drug dealer with a burner Cricket Mobile put his phone down. It's unbelievable.
Well, as the White House and the liberal media blames everything on you, our listeners, we encourage you to look at the C-SPAN tape of the first family as they took in the fireworks from their balcony on the 4th of July. Just take a close look at Hunter Biden and watch his actions, watch what he does when he shifts behind the president, and just for yourself think maybe it wasn't a teacher who was bringing her class and sneaking cocaine.
I saw that video. I think it was Howard Mortman who tweeted out this video. First off, the family looks incredibly awkward being out there on the balcony. Like, Hunter only has like some of his kids that he acknowledges. He's like very sweaty and seems agitated. He reaches towards his nostrils.
Allegedly.
Turns around,
Allegedly.
Right, allegedly.
A lot of weird stuff is happening in that video. So I agree. Everyone should go take a look at that.
Many people are saying.
Look at the tape. As the White House blames you, look at the tape of them.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfectly said.
Yeah, well, my 4th of July wasn't nearly that cool.
You didn't have firefighters finding cocaine around the place?
No.
I thought that was just a normal thing that happens in everyone's house. Just the White House? Is that it?
No, I took our 3-year-old to the Nats game, which was on at 11 a.m., which is earlier first pitch than most baseball games. But 4th of July is sort of perfect. You can take him there, run him out, goes to the playground for a couple hours, and it's like 90 degrees out. So he goes home and takes a big nap, and then Dad has a nice afternoon.
Perfect.
What did you guys do?
Well, we had a huge get-together at my wife's family's house. We had 85 people, swimming, sunburns, bug bites, hot dogs, fireworks. It was as American as you can get. And my nephew, I'm not kidding you, this is the greatest moment. We were just about to shoot off all the fireworks, and my nephew was like, guys, you got to tell me before you shoot them off. And he goes sprinting in front of everybody, holding an American flag, just running in front of, like, across this field. It was so, he had like these Oakley glasses on that wrapped around his face.
Nice.
He's a great kid. He's a great kid.
Smugglesworth, what'd you do?
So the main part, I guess, was we went to dinner, had like 4 or 5 different animals. The highlight was the duck, just like an entire duck sliced up. Absolutely fantastic. Went to the rooftop, saw the fireworks. That was it. Nice, cool 4th of July. Good time.
It's awesome.
Man, that just sounds like a wonderful evening.
Yeah.
5 animals.
But it was anything we could find that wasn't running. I was happy to eat on that day.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's Thursday, which means we got to get to the 5 stars. We always go to The Voice first.
Okay, so this first one comes from SC Minion, and it's titled, "Is There Anything the Program Can't Do?" And SC Minion writes, "Fellas, like many recently minted minions, I found you through Megyn Kelly. At about the same time, at about the time, okay.
Oh, God, we got problems.
We got problems. At about that time, we started back working in the office at least 2 days per week. I was faced with the prospect of once again dealing with morning traffic. Being Irish and Italian, I'm blessed with a short fuse and inclination for, shall we say, overreaction. I found that listening to the program on my commute has provided such an enjoyable and informative diversion that the drive flies by. So thank you so much for providing a remedy for road rage."
Nice.
"I now have episodes 1 through 300 on standby just in case. Thanks, SC Minion. P.S. During last week's discussion on the Titan sun disappearance, I was surprised and quite frankly disappointed that the possible connection to a rogue killer whale pods was not part of the conversation. Do better."
Yeah, that's right. Smug, you want to take this next one?
Sure. This is from Jason Hardy. It says, "Charges for Disney adults." I already agree. "I've been listening to the program since discovering you guys on Megyn Kelly several months ago." Thank you so much.
Another
I always
Megyn
love
Kelly.
hearing that.
Yeah.
Love hearing that. "Your charges segment had me dying in the gym and got me several odd looks. I previously thought Disney adults were harmless until taking my 4 young kids to Disney last year.
Oh, God bless you.
Yeah, when we used our Lightning Lane pass to view one of the parades, I could not get my kids anywhere near the street as the entire front row was occupied by large Disney adults who refused to move for any of the kids. Charges. I had to make my first purchase of merch from a podcast by buying a Charges t-shirt. Keep up the outstanding work, fellas. Thank you so much for that.
That's incredible.
Again, that's the heart of the problem. Like, what a scumbag move to be an adult taking up the front row so kids can't even see the parade.
You can't.
Like, that's a place for kids. Get the hell in the back.
Exactly. And not only to be an adult sitting in the front row, to be a fat adult sitting in the front row. So you're taking up like 3 or 4 kids.
Being like, no, your children should not be enjoying Disney.
It's not an inexpensive place to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, 4 young kids. Can you imagine how much that costs? It's incredible. I mean, you've taken your girls there.
No, you cannot get out of there for less than thousands.
Oof.
I think I speak for the whole Variety program when I say, I think the first listener of the Ruthless Variety program who takes a picture in a Charges shirt in front of the Magic Kingdom gets a whole bunch of free merch.
Yeah. I'm 100% with that. 100%.
Okay, I'll read this third one here. This is from ALTP, a banger program. Smug, soft on free market principles.
Oh, let's hear this.
Oh, we got a blast. We got a blast on Smug. The fellas give a banger of a program each week. However, I can't help but acknowledge Smug's soft on free market principles Southwest stance. It is the epitome of equal opportunity, not equal outcomes with tons of choices. Want a better seat? Be better at checking in on time. Instead of a few choices a la commie supermarkets, it's the bread aisle in a free market society. All jokes aside, the fellas put out banger after banger each week, and as I roam the Longworth basement, this is a Hill staffer, I can't help but feel ghosts of the historic past. No, not of great legislators, but of young Smash days before Christmas, purchasing great blankets and traveling brooches. They are very cool to me, Ashbrook. No worry, brother. Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
This is a very, very good fan of the program.
That's outstanding.
This is one of our friends.
Again, it might not be free market, but Southwest really needs to be just like the containment area for people who are terrible at flying. Like everyone who wants to throw a tantrum, your kids are going crazy, get on Southwest. That's the purpose.
Oh, man. I mean, I can't argue with that. You won me over with your last segment where you said we should just get rid of the seats and we should put hay in there.
Put hay down, cattle prod them in there.
So every Thursday, we like to do the presidential roundup of who won the week. But first, let's get into some of these headlines. First here from MSN. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp considers what he really wants out of 2024. Insiders have noted Kemp's gradual cracking of the door as the presidential Trump challengers have floundered. In recent interviews, Kemp has publicly not ruled out a run for president, and plugged-in Republicans say that he hasn't taken the option off the table. Interesting.
That is interesting, particularly with how well he did in Georgia last cycle and all of the sort of like murmuring behind the scenes about will he or won't he. And I wonder if maybe at the end of the day, he's watching closely, and over the next few months, he's going to make a decision.
Well, he's got an incredible political operation. We all learned that in the last cycle. And, I don't think I've been bashful about this and saying, like, if you were looking for someone to be a foil to Donald Trump with a track record of being, like, a conservative who's won a tough primary, someone like Brian Kemp's a great choice, right? I mean, like, this is a guy who Trump endorsed his primary opponent, former Senator David Perdue, and then he won the thing by 50 freaking points.
Yeah. Also, I always think you bring up a really great point. I don't know if you said it on the show or just when we're hanging out, Duncan, but that a very important, factor to consider in which candidate you're supporting in this primary is, can they win Georgia?
Right.
Because that is, nothing gets off the ground if we don't win Georgia. That's key to anyone running for president. Donald Trump lost it in 2020. That was a huge problem. Getting Georgia back in the win column is like step one.
Yeah.
And given Kemp's incredible success, I think that's a case that he can make. When he's telling people if he decides to run, why he's doing it, I think that's like reason number one to put out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a constant tension we see in the presidential primary, right? Where it's like, how do you animate the rural white working class voters who were so key to Donald Trump's, constituency in 2016 and 2020, and also not get completely blown out in the suburbs where in raw vote totals, there's a huge amount of voters. And if you do as poorly as Trump had done there in 2020, it's very difficult to win a state like Georgia, where those suburbs around Atlanta, they make up such a huge percentage of the overall vote, you know? So anyway, we're going to keep our eye on that. I think it's very interesting. We'll see where it goes. Gavin Newsom campaigns for Biden in Idaho and still insists he won't enter the 2024 race despite questions about president's health and poor poll numbers.
Well, I don't think anybody should believe a single word that comes out of Gavin Newsom's mouth.
I don't.
At any point. I mean, the guy, first of all, he's a Democrat. Second of all, he's from California.
And he's in Idaho, of all places.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why would he be out there? So it says here in the article from the Daily Mail that he's focusing on visiting red states for some reason.
Okay. Yeah, just because. That's what governors of California do. The guy wants to be the lady in waiting for Joe 100%. Biden. He absolutely, if Biden can't do it, if he's not going to do it, he thinks that he's got a better shot at it than Kamala Harris.
Do you think it's kind of like a PR play, like he's going to go into these deep red places and he's going to try to make news, then the national media picks it up and they're like, oh, well, this guy, Gavin Newsom, he's going out there, he's trying different things, Joe Biden's stuck in the basement, that sort of thing?
100%.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting strategy. I don't think it's going to work for him, but we'll see. All right, so fellas, as I said here at the beginning of the segment, we always pick a winner of the week in the presidential campaign. Ashbrook, who do you got?
I don't know if you guys saw the parades in New Hampshire over the weekend and over the holiday. Ron DeSantis picked up a lot of energy in these crowds. And, I know Donald Trump had energy in South Carolina. It was very impressive, big crowds. But Ronnie D has been sort of the whipping child in the last 2 or 3 weeks because a lot of people say his campaign hasn't been as organized as it should be. His outside group isn't doing what it needs to do. But he did have some excitement in New Hampshire over the weekend, and he is, I think, had an up week. That's why I'm just going to say that Ron DeSantis had the win.
Okay, and you sort of mentioned it, Ashbrook, but I think if I had to pick a winner of the week, I mean, look, based on that rally in South Carolina, I got to give it to Donald Trump, and I think, people were sort of qualifying it on Twitter saying, like, oh, well, this is an Independence Day event in this town and it's always big, and he just sort of piggybacked on that. Well, like, that's called running a good campaign.
Yep.
That's called running a good campaign. Like, not everything has to be out of the box, your entire responsibility. You show up and you get in front of a crowd and they like you. That's sort of a good thing, right? And so, I mean, when you guys had La Savita on the show, I think what's been clear, and we all know Chris, from previous campaigns, is that he's a very organized and diligent, campaign operative who puts together stuff like this in a way that is much more organized than previous Trump campaigns that we've seen. And for that reason, I got to give it to him.
I think that's a really good point. The Trump campaign seems like it's a far more disciplined operation than it's been in his previous runs. Right now, I want to give a little bit of a shout out because I thought it was kind of innovative what Tim Scott tried. Did you guys see on the 4th of July, he had like a hashtag like Ask Tim Scott, where, he would pick, random folks who would ask him a question with that hashtag. And Ashley Hinson even in Iowa asked him a question.
Awesome. Love her.
Yeah, and that's really great. It's an innovative approach, but again, in terms of who won the week, I'd have to give it to Trump. In terms of the South Carolina rally looked great. They just seem to be running a disciplined operation. I think the way that the polls are right now, I would feel like the other candidates need to do something like really rejigger it to get that attention and just momentum going. Because
that's such a tough thing to do in the summer.
It's a tough thing to do in the summer.
Yeah.
Like 4th of July, the same thing. Like, it was an innovative idea, but 4th of July to me is a day that I think a lot of folks are kind of tuned out. From social media to begin with, and like you said, summer's the toughest time to try and shake things up.
Well, yeah, and what's going to change between now and that first debate, right? In this environment where people are traveling, they're taking their kids places for the summer, kids are out of school. It's not the best time to find traction. I would say the one thing, though, that we're going to be looking forward to here over the next week or so, as we get to that July 15th deadline where all the FEC reports become public, these campaigns are going to start announcing how much they raised in Q2. And, I'm going to be looking a lot at DeSantis. I know he's only in for, I think, 6 or 7, maybe 7, I don't know exactly, 6 or 7 weeks of Q2. But if he posts a big number, it's going to be momentum. There's going to be stories. That's obviously good. But I think outside of that sort of dynamic, like the fundraising dynamic and stuff, summers in the off year don't tend to be the biggest news-making events over the course of a campaign.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that's going to be riding on the first debate, and I agree. Up until then, it seems like the best opportunity to try to get attention.
Yeah.
Post a big fundraising number for the second quarter.
Yeah. Well, guys, libs want to block out the sun.
We're not making this up.
Yeah. The only news that's going to be going on this summer is the libs want to block out the sun.
I could not believe this headline when I came across the transom the other day. I mean, it literally is a joke.
Yeah, it's a Simpsons episode. This is from Politico here. The headline is White House cautiously, the White House cautiously opens the door to study blocking sun's rays to slow global warming. Yikes.
I don't think they can build a pair of sunglasses big enough to cover the Atlantic to the Pacific. Maybe Joe Biden can do that, and maybe that's why Politico writes the term cautiously.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because they know that they're going to be made fun of, and then Politico's going to be made fun of?
I think they know this sounds like a Bond villain pipe dream, like blocking out the sun. Like, think about how stupid an idea that is. Clearly stupid. And like in the Politico article, it says right here, the White House offered measured support for the idea of studying how to block sunlight from hitting Earth's surface as a way to limit global warming. Just like, you can ask a 4-year-old kid, does this sound like a good idea? Blocking out the sun, making everyone freeze to death and killing all the crops. You think that sounds like a great idea? And it just goes back to like, this is, these climate change people, it's a death cult. They really don't care about making a difference or helping people. Their idea is, how do we make everyone suffer? Yes, we're fine with John Kerry and movie stars taking private jets, but everyone, you should get your straws taken away.
Yeah.
They want to make the average person miserable, completely miserable.
They're going to get all of us on solar panels. We're going to put them on the roofs of our houses, right? And they're going to have solar fields all across the country, and then they're going to block out the sun.
100%. It's unbelievable.
Oh, man.
One second, I have some breaking news.
Okay.
This just broke. We were speaking of fundraising numbers.
Yeah.
The Trump campaign pulled in $35 million in the second quarter. That figure nearly doubled what he raised in Q1 and suggests that the indictments are helping with fundraising. That's just from Outside and Stott at Politico.
How about that?
I'll give you a minute here to read through that. I'm curious if that is the Trump campaign or if that's Trump plus the affiliate groups.
So, it's a good question. It says right here, the former president's joint fundraising committee.
Yeah, the JFC.
Yeah. Raked in more than $35 million. That figure's about twice the $18.8 million that committee raised in the first quarter of the year. The joint fundraising committee is split between two entities, Trump's official campaign and his political action committee, Save America.
Yeah, the distinction there, I think, is important for people who listen or are watching on YouTube. We love that people are subscribing to YouTube. Many people are saying it's the best YouTube that's out there.
It sure is. What is that YouTube?
It's just Ruthless Podcast. If you just put it in there on YouTube, you'll find it. No subdomain needed.
But you should hit the subscribe button.
You should definitely hit the subscribe button. As Smug likes to say, we have exclusive content on there, and I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's important for people who are listening or watching to know that this is rolled up. Like, this isn't just the campaign itself. This is also, the Save America entity. And that's a huge haul. I'm not trying to discount it at all. But as we, in the conversation we had last week, the most important thing that we noticed here in some of these early reservations for TV advertising is the discrepancy between candidate campaigns and the super PACs, right? Mm-hmm. And that those super PACs have to pay sometimes 3, 4, 5 times the market rate, that the lowest rate that the candidate campaigns get. So when you're in, an environment like in Iowa, where inventory, the number of ads that are available to be bought, it might not be that large. You end up in a situation where that candidate money is in high demand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's further evidence that the Trump campaign is more organized than anybody knows.
I think, again, that case is made. It says right here, the official did not break down how much of the $35 million plus went to the campaign and how much went to the PAC. But the most recent fundraising solicitations direct 90% of each donation to the campaign and the remaining 10% to the PAC. So,
yeah. So, look, it's a huge haul. And, related, I saw some of the early Senate numbers from Adam Schiff, who put up like an absolutely obscene fundraising
For that
haul.
California primary where Democrats are just at each
Yeah,
other's throats.
and he raised an absolute ton of money right after he was censured by the House of Representatives. So what you're seeing here, I think, in a lot of the small dollar fundraising, and we've known this for a very long time, is that sort of like, the bad news is what motivates people the most to give when they feel like you're under threat and under assault. That's when they open the wallets. And for Donald Trump, that's obviously happened both in New York and in this federal indictment, right? And so if you support somebody, it's weird. It's sort of the perverse incentives sometimes that you encounter in small dollar fundraising where, you can succeed the most when the world's on fire, which isn't necessarily the best system that we've set up here. But it is what it is.
I mean, that's a great comparison between the two. That this is not like a uniquely Trump thing. This is kind of like defending your team.
Right.
Kind of thing is really motivating those small dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. So, guys, this thing from WAPO, I got to read it because it's absolutely absurd. 4 ways to make your BBQ grill better for your health and the environment this summer.
Okay,
so
here
it's
we go.
not enough to block out the sun. They're going to now lecture us about barbecuing.
Oh, boy.
So here in the United States, most charcoal brands are above board, and you don't need to sweat your grill's greenhouse gas emissions. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we were sweating that.
Yeah, they're minuscule. Grills and barbecues in the United States generate just 0.0003% of overall annual emissions. What you put on the grill is more important than how you fire it up. Meat.
Yeah, they're like meat.
At least how most of it is raised today drives 57% of all food production emissions, much of that from beef.
I mean, so they're saying that 57% of food emissions are from meat, and that's just like a travesty somehow.
That's the problem.
Oh, Holmes? Oh, hold on. Hold, you want? Hold on.
What is going on here?
This is just. You're just going to interrupt the program. Hold on one second. Though. Do you want to plug them in, or you want me just holding the mic? Okay. You want to just break up our show here, pal? You have the.
Well, listen. It's not like you were informing people who didn't know. I'm calling in because I want to make sure that you guys are keeping it tight.
Yeah, I think, we're having a very good conversation among conservatives.
We were keeping it tight until we got a random call on the cell phone.
Look, I just want to point out that you phone banked me when I was at O'Hare, and we had this conversation, prior to starting the show, that we didn't want to interrupt. We didn't want to interrupt our friend Josh Holmes, and here he is interrupting us.
Well, it's my commitment to the program.
Yeah.
I understand that you're in a busy airport and there's all kinds of beers to drink and people to hang out with, and you can't think about the listeners of the program. But here I am on the beach, stepping away from my family.
Oh, thank you for your service.
I think people deserve the real stuff, and so I'm giving it all I got.
Well, I appreciate it, pal. Did you have a good 4th?
I had a great 4th. We were down here at Bald Head Island, which if you haven't been there, don't come because it's a great secret.
Thank you for announcing it to hundreds of thousands of people.
Everyone goes straight to Bald Head Island.
Yeah. Well, it was terrific, and we had a blast. Saw some fireworks. Kids seemed to be enjoying themselves. It's just it's a lovely time. I haven't had a real beach vacation in a long time, so I kind of like it.
I'm glad you're able to have that, but your friends here got to get back to work.
Yeah, so we showed up to work, but I hope you enjoyed the beach.
What are you talking? First of all, have you covered the cocaine?
We covered
right off the top.
We covered the cocaine. It was the lead, pal. We covered it.
Well, you have to cover it. And first of all, do you see the explanation that they've given that it's in a highly trafficked area of the White House, and so therefore they have no way of knowing who could have put it in a drawer that contains electronics?
We did about 10 minutes on that. We thought it was highly unlikely that a teacher from the Midwest who's taken their eighth grade class field trip is going to pass 3 rounds of security and leave some yak on the ground.
Also, I appreciate the fact that at this point we've become C-SPAN. It's like random drunk caller. What are your thoughts?
You watch your tongue, Smug. Crying out loud. You're going to go out of town soon. I'm going to fuck you up.
Would you have any good drinks or pops down there?
A lot of good pops, a lot of good drinks. They do a nice frozen drink down here, all kinds of different flavors and that kind of thing. Got a nice little golf course that I got out on once or twice, and everything's pretty good. One thing I did learn, fellas, and I don't know if you guys have known this. Do you know what the origins of Jell-O are?
We did not know that.
No idea.
Like the historical origins or what makes up Jell-O?
Well, it's both. It's one and the same. It's like, how did they invent Jell-O and like what?
Isn't it hooves? It's hooves.
Yeah, right. So I thought.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's animal hooves.
I heard.
No.
Yeah, hooves.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
And so I did a little research. Yeah, because people are saying the Jell-O is actually made out of hooves, and I'm like, is that a horse hoof or a cow hoof? What kind of hoof are we talking about here? And so I did a little research. It turns out it's a collagen-based product that was first invented when a guy bought like an animal render outfit, and so he had hooves and things like that. And it's actually like the big bones of a horse or a cow.
Wait a minute.
So you can get like a Kentucky Derby Jell-O, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
like that's what we're gunning
100%.
for.
100%. That's what I'm talking about.
How is it that
next Derby, every horse that dies, mint julep Jell-O?
I don't understand. I don't
100%
understand
needs to be
how
done.
they can. I don't understand how they can make bones jiggle so much. I mean, did you ever see the Bill Cosby commercial? Nobody sold Jell-O better than Bill Cosby.
I think that's a guy who was a bit too much into fun.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys don't want it to. You're gonna
not a fan.
Well, no, but you don't have to be a fan.
Jill and jiggle is anything we ought to get into.
Yeah.
It's a family program.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
It was a commercial.
Somehow somebody took a belt sander to a horse femur, and the next thing you know, we had Jell-O pudding pops.
So I'm telling you, next year we should take this show to the Kentucky Derby, and any horse that croaks, we get mint julep Jell-Os right there for all the minions who are there in the crowd. 100%, that's got to be done.
I don't know what the process is, Smug. I mean, it's possible.
It sounds like a belt sander and some Jell-O mix will get the job done.
I think that might be it. We need some further clarification, but I think that you're onto that, and I'm all for it. And I think those kind of Jell-O shots with a little bourbon in it would just be terrific.
Well, that sounds like a plan to me, man.
Well, appreciate the call, pal, and
Are you guys are you playing King of the Hill, or I guess I'm defending champ, so you can't.
no, we're gonna maybe we'll have something else here. I don't want to spoil it for the listeners, but we may have something else.
Huh. Okay. I'm prepared to play it whenever. So I'll just retain the title. I'll keep the belt on. I'll walk it around bald head here for a bit.
Well, what I appreciate most is you called in. You miss your friends, and we miss you too, pal.
I miss you dearly. Enjoy your rest of your show, gentlemen.
Thanks, buddy. We'll see you.
See ya.
Again, we're like officially the C-SPAN.
What a nice, yeah. What a nice surprise. What a nice surprise.
Yeah. No, I like it. Okay, so
hopping back
just to get the train back on the tracks here, we were talking about how, according to Washington Post, the meat is the problem.
Yeah. Again, like this is another example of the genre of like how liberals celebrate the 4th of July is they just want to be the wet blanket. Like, no one should be allowed to enjoy themselves. The libs are like, oh, don't you guys know I'm a miserable person? I want to make you miserable now, too. Like, whether it's Cory Bush being like, how dare anyone celebrate this holiday when the Constitution and the Founding Fathers were all racists? It's like someone's got to show up. Some libs got to show up and just try to ruin everyone having a good time.
You saw the Ben and Jerry's tweet that we're living on stolen land.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, no mention from Ben and Jerry's about how they're going to give their corporate property over to like indigenous people.
Of course not. Of course, because it's easier to tweet or be an asshole like the Washington Post here than actually try to make any sort of a difference that helps people. Because being like, listen, I know you're with your families and you're grilling and your kids are having great memories of you spending time with them. But here's why that's bad. Because I'm mad.
So
I have cats and I'm childless and I don't want anyone else enjoying their time.
I actually have a theory about this. I think I may have mentioned it previously, but every holiday you get something of this variety of how terrible said holiday is for the environment. And I really believe it's because these libs hate their families and never want to travel to have to see them, that they have to ruin every holiday.
Yep.
You know, like where they always say, oh, well, all those greenhouse gas emissions from traveling for Thanksgiving or XYZ reasons why Christmas is a bad holiday is just their way of being like, I don't want to travel and see my family.
Yeah.
You know, like
a lot of these journos are living in Brooklyn, their apartment subsidized by their dad, but they can't even put in the effort to go see the guy, you know? It's unbelievable. Like 99% of their rage is just like internalized angry family issues. And we're like, now everyone should suffer. Like I was always the terrible child. No one liked having me around, and now everyone's gonna feel my pain.
Yeah, Ashbrook, you gonna defend your buddies?
Who?
Your journo buddies.
The journos.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay, so let's move on here to what I think is probably some of the biggest news of the entire year, and that is the incredible news that came out of the Supreme Court over the last week. We obviously saw it with the decision on Creative 303 or 303 Creative. I can't remember which one it was, but the religious liberty decision that came down. You had the court invalidating affirmative action in the Harvard case. And then you had, the Supreme Court striking down Biden's student loan forgiveness program. So, I mean, you had three huge, monumental cases that were big victories for people who defend the Constitution.
Huge wins.
Let's start with the student loan forgiveness program.
Sure.
I would not call that monumental. I think that everybody, including Joe Biden, knew that when that was announced, it was going to be struck down by the Supreme Court. It didn't matter if this is a court that was reshaped by Mitch McConnell with the help of Donald Trump as president. It doesn't matter if that occurs. What he suggested about everybody who's a taxpayer footing the bill for student loans was not constitutional to begin with. They all knew it. It was a political ploy to help them in the midterms.
Even in the Supreme Court in the decision, they cited Nancy Pelosi in 2021 being like frustrated during a press conference, being like, listen, the president can't just decide student loans go away, okay?
Right,
like
exactly.
Congress has to vote for that to happen.
Exactly.
So they cited her exact words of like, listen,
Right.
this is illegal for a president to decide, I'm going to try and buy votes by just making these people's loans disappear for them and go on the back of taxpayers in this country.
Right. So
Look,
that,
I
can't do
that.
That ruling might be in a little different.
I don't disagree with you on that, though. I just, as somebody who likes seeing the executive be reined in, I appreciate the precedent that it sets, that you can't just broadly interpret these statutes and say I can do anything as president of the United States. So that's why I really love that decision happened.
Yep.
I want to for the affirmative action.
Yeah.
So Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson had her dissent on that.
Yeah.
And then Justice Thomas cited her words in his writing. And I mean, this is brilliant. I had to read this. It says, accordingly, Justice Jackson's race-infused worldview falls flat at each step. Individuals are the sum of their unique experiences, challenges, and accomplishments. What matters is not the barriers they face, but how they choose to confront them. And their race is not to blame for everything, good or bad, that happens in their lives. A contrary, myopic worldview based on individual skin color to the total exclusion of their personal choices is nothing short of racial determinism.
Yeah.
That's it.
And this is a guy who spoke from experience.
Right?
Like
absolutely brilliant.
And you remember we did that great interview with Amol Thabar, and because he's got that great book about Justice Thomas, and one of the things that Thomas wrote about a lot was he thought one of the most insidious things he witnessed in his upbringing was when he finally, got to college and to the Ivy League, no less, that the most pervasive thing he witnessed were these smug liberals who assumed that this man is really there because of affirmative action. It made them feel superior.
They were taking credit for his success.
For his success, right? And so this is
what libs do.
Right. And this is a guy who's witnessed that sort of perverse, subtle racism his whole life and informed his entire judicial philosophy. And so, I think there's but you can't look at a guy like Justice Thomas and say he doesn't know what happens in a world of affirmative action. Like he's lived it. He's the living proof that it's a failed ideology that should inform how we put people in college. And okay, so we covered those two cases, but this 303 creative case, this is the religious liberty case of the web designer who didn't want to build the website for the gay couple because of the expressive nature of their work, right? Like this isn't a public accommodation law. This is, I have to do, in my job, express a opinion about this. And, we saw this previously in the Obama administration where, Masterpiece Cake Shop, where they're like, no, bake the cake.
You were forced to bake the cake.
You have to bake the cake. We got to sue the nuns to make sure that they provide,
contraceptive birth controls.
Yeah, right. And now we've seen a reversal in this court now that we have this conservative majority. And the libs have just they're lighting their hair on fire about it.
It's insane. So the thing is that it's very clear and basic what has happened here. It's that you cannot force labor upon someone else, essentially. You cannot be like, you are going to do what I tell you to. How is that a controversial idea?
Right.
I mean, in a free country, how is that controversial? And the fact that the left is like, no, you will be forced to adopt our ideology, or we will use the full force of government to come after you, which has become their ideology, whole part.
And there was also a lot of background here. The statute that was passed in Colorado forced people to not only engage in speech that they might not support, but then also there are all these. You have to take these classes on the government was going to make people take classes on sensitivity training and all these sorts of things. It was absolutely absurd.
It's insanity. It's insanity. So thank God for the Supreme Court.
Anyway, that brings us to the news here. The Washington Post, and the title is Biden faces renewed pressure to embrace Supreme Court overhaul. Oh, gosh.
Overhaul.
It's just an overhaul.
Yeah.
Just going to do a little tinkering under the hood.
And so this is, I've come back to this often because I think this is probably the most important fight that we can be engaged in right now as conservatives. Our last line of defense to hold this country together, to defend the Constitution, to have individual liberty is the Supreme Court. That's all we have defending our rights at this point.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the same place that the left has trained all their guns at. In some cases, literally. You saw a left-wing lunatic try to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh after the Dodds leak on abortion.
Yeah.
The left is trying to pack the court. That's what all this has been about. They've been putting falsehoods out there about about this is an ethics issue. These justices are corrupt. That's all been disproven. And when you had Justice come out and pre-butt this smear campaign, they were irate.
Yeah,
you think
if you're listening to this or you're watching this, you think it's a coincidence that all these articles dropped right before all these decisions?
Yep.
No, this shit was wired up from the fucking beginning.
It's not a coincidence at all, and I think it's an important point to make that this is coming from the far left. The Washington Post, who is writing on behalf of Brian Fallon, who used to be a press secretary for Chuck Schumer and now runs a left-leaning group that is trying to change
They want to pack the courts.
They want to pack the courts. So the Washington Post writes, as Democrats reel from another painful set of defeats at the Supreme Court in recent weeks, Michael Duncan probably noticed the fact that they pull out Democrats reeling from defeats as if this is a political question.
Exactly.
Right? The Supreme Court looks at constitutional issues and rules based on the Constitution. The Washington Post is reframing this as a political issue to try to fire up the lefties because the Washington Post is right along with them ideologically.
100%. Right. Great point.
So here's one other thing I'd like to point out about this article. So they're saying, I'll just go on to say that President Biden is facing renewed pressure from a range of elements in his party, from liberal lawmakers to abortion rights activists to more forcefully embrace far-reaching changes to the high court. And one of the things I found interesting is the evidence they present for this supposed renewed pressure from a range of elements in his party. They list a handful of libs, Don Beyer, Ro Khanna, two far-left members of their party. And then they go on to say, in another illustration of the issue's growing potency within the party, 3 leading Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate from California, Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter, have all embraced expanding the court.
They're like a California Democrat primary.
Yeah,
is like
exactly.
where all of us should be getting our views from.
Yeah,
like this is the evidence that there's a growing chorus of Democrats or people who are left of center. This is a far left phenomenon.
Yeah, it
But,
is.
I mean, you hate to see it, but in another way, you love to see it. You think John Tester wants to have this conversation?
Not at all.
You think Sherrod Brown wants? You think Joe Manchin wants to have this
I
conversation?
I don't see their names.
Oh,
in
that's
this
so
story.
weird.
And I think, like Ashbrook says, to show how fringe this is, by them saying that, like, as Democrats real, trying to get them all under one banner, being like, oh, this is Democrats thing. This is a very far left idea. And the reason for that is this is an agenda being pushed by far left dark money groups.
Right.
It's these left-wing billionaires who want to, like George Soros, who went after prosecutors, who they want to completely control every aspect of society. And so they fund these groups that push this kind of nonsense, like pack the courts. Anyone with in their right mind knows that adding more justices to the Supreme Court completely destroys the whole idea of how checks and balances work in this country.
They know this. Brian Fallon, who runs Demand Justice, that's a left-wing group. He's a Harvard-educated guy. He's a very smart guy, former Schumer staffer. He is a hard lefty. These groups are very hard left, and they want to change America. These are the kinds of groups that would be behind shitting all over July 4th.
Yeah.
Right.
Saying,
and these are the kind of groups who have actually funded those protesters, the people who are illegally besieging the homes of where the justices and their families live. To this day, for over a year, the conservative justices have had lunatics outside their home, even after one of them attempted to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh. They have to live with that mob outside their homes, and they are funded by groups like Demand Justice.
Yeah, but thankfully, the Senate majority does not run through California. It runs through Montana and Ohio and West Virginia and places like that. And I got to say, man, I love that they're pushing this because it's going to put those Dems in red states in very uncomfortable positions that they're going to have to squirm over here for the next 18 months. And, I just love to see that.
No, I do too. I do too. And it's honestly refreshing. We're living in a country where libs have seized nearly every institution. They've seized the mainstream media. They've seized universities. They've now seized a branch and a half of the government.
Yeah.
Republicans have the House of Representatives, and Americans have a Supreme Court that reflects them.
Yep.
And so it's very nice for an average American to be able to look up at the Supreme Court and say, they look and think a little bit more like me than any other aspect or any other institution in this country right now.
Well, who doesn't think like us is the journalist.
That's right.
Of course they don't.
Because we had these incredible decisions of the Supreme Court, and we don't have Josh Holmes with us here to play King of the Hill, I thought it only made sense today to play Dem or Journo.
Excellent.
So let's
play.
Let's do it. Let's go to that music.
Dem or Journo, 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 Dem or Journo. Nobody knows.
Oh, it's great. It's great. We haven't played this game in so long.
It's been a while.
It's been too long. For our new listeners, or the listeners who came in through Megyn Kelly's show, as we saw in the 5 stars, just to explain the rules again, Smug and Ashbrook are going to be our contestants here in the game. And I'm going to read 4 statements, 3 of which have been made by journalists and 1 that's been made by a Democrat. And they have to decide who is the Democrat.
It's incredibly difficult.
It's
incredibly difficult.
It's very tough. All right, so all these are themed here on the SCOTUS verdicts.
And I also want to reiterate, I am definitely an underdog here because Ashbrook is friends with all these journos. So when he's hanging out with them, they talk like
maybe
this.
they helped him. Maybe he helped them write.
That's the thing.
These
So
things.
I'm really happy to go at him. Let's see how this goes.
Okay. So statement number one, and this is on the affirmative action case, and this is responding to the quote unquote model minority myth. This is about Asian Americans who were, of course, the plaintiffs here in this case before Harvard. Quote, the myth ignores the long legacies of systemic racism faced by Black Americans. It ignores selective recruiting of highly educated immigrants, and it enforces a false story about Asian Americans who are not a monolith. Not a monolith, but apparently Black Americans are a monolith.
Yeah, that's the thing is this is eventually what happens when you try to put everyone in your racial buckets for your agenda.
What you're witnessing is the failure of the intersectionality of the leftist coalition, right? It's
like, don't you realize that Asians are individuals? And it's like, interesting.
Yeah, wow.
So you want to judge individuals?
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
So interesting. This is also on the affirmative action case.
Second.
Yes, statement number two. The court's conservative supermajority, 4 white men, 1 white woman, and Justice Clarence Thomas
incredible,
ruled that affirmative action programs, quote, unavoidably employ race in a negative manner and, quote, involve racial stereotyping, quote, end quote, violating the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution.
Wait, so this person is contending that the Supreme Court is violating equal protection?
Oh, no, this person is trying to point out that white people decided this, and then
the decision violates equal protection. Affirmative action does not.
This person,
this
person is deciding to single out Justice Clarence Thomas and not mention Justice Clarence Thomas's race, but mention 4 white men and 1 white woman.
And Justice Clarence Thomas, like, it's incredible.
He gets his
erasing him.
Yeah, he gets his own dependent clause there. It's very interesting. All right, statement number 3. The Supreme Court is far overreaching their authority, and I believe, frankly, that we really need to be having conversations about judicial review as a check on the courts as well. Statement number 4, and this is on the 303 creative case. The Supreme Court just made it possible for private businesses to discriminate against people like me simply because they fear that they might have to do something that no one asked them to do.
Incredible.
Those are your 4 statements, fellas.
This is tough. Michael, this might be the hardest one ever.
These are pretty tough. I think I have a good idea. Should we go in order? I'll give by secure ballot. I'll let Duncan know which one I think is the Dem.
Okay.
All right.
And this is totally a guess here. By secure ballot, I will. Do I need to go secure ballot?
Yeah, sure.
What do you want to open it to the floor, pal? You want to have any discussion?
I would like to. Can I hear number 1 again?
Sure. This, again, is on the model minority myth, quote unquote, model minority myth, referring to Asian Americans. Quote, the myth ignores the long legacies of systemic racism faced by Black Americans. It ignores selective recruiting of highly educated immigrants, and it enforces a false story about Asian Americans who are not a monolith.
Man, this is a very, very...
For not a monolith, they spend a lot of time talking about monoliths.
Yes, they do.
That Asian Americans are highly educated immigrants.
That's a whole...
That all Black Americans are victims of systemic racism. It's very interesting.
That's why this completely fell apart, because the whole reason of getting rid of affirmative action is the idea that individuals should be judged individually. It
It's like
doesn't
that-
say that now Asian Americans should get preference. It's saying
Yeah.
that in every individual should be decided on their merits.
It's like that whole that whole content of your character thing there.
Right? And
Wow.
then you have a journalist who's like, wait a minute, these aren't monoliths. It's like, exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like you should judge individuals individually.
You played yourself.
Yeah. It's incredible. So I guess I gave it away. I thought number one was a Journo.
Okay.
That was my guess. How about you, Ashbrook?
Until I heard it the second time,
Okay.
I thought number one was a Journo. But after hearing it and after hearing the explanation and thinking about it in context of the other three statements, I actually think number one is a Democrat.
Interesting.
Wow.
All right. So we got split right off the back. So you had number one as your Democrat?
I have number one right now.
Could you reread Duncan number three?
The Supreme Court is far overreaching their authority, and I believe, frankly, that we really need to be having conversations about judicial review as a check on the courts as well.
So that is, I believe, when they said that, so I believe, strikes me as something like an advocate or an operative would say. And in this case, specifically something like one of these demand justice type groups that we just discussed. So I guess number three is the Dem.
But they just want to have conversations, Smug.
Just a conversation about destroying the Constitution. Just a little conversation.
Okay, so Ashbrook, you're number one as being the Dem.
I'm going to say number one.
And Smug, you said number three.
Although it's very confusing.
Yeah.
It is so hard to tell which is the Democrat and which
It
is
really
the
is.
Journo because they're
yeah.
all probably voting for the same president.
Oh, yeah.
I like playing this game around tentpole events like SCOTUS decisions and things like that because, you know, everybody's got their take out there and they're all dog shit. Okay, so let's go to two first because neither one picked two. This is the court's conservative majority, 4 white men, 1 white woman, and Justice Clarence Thomas, sort of erasing his race.
Not even Democrats erase Thomas in the way that the lib journos erase Thomas.
And that is from a journalist, Jonathan Capehart.
Incredible.
And then number 4, and I appreciate that neither of you picked 2 or 4. The Supreme Court just made it possible for private business to discriminate against people like me. That's also Jonathan Capehart.
So when he said like me, I was like, every journalist, that's their favorite topic. Like me.
Themselves.
Yeah,
They make,
100%.
They make it about
This is about me, of course.
right.
I'm not here to report news. Everything's about me.
Yeah.
Ironically, more so than the politicians in this town.
Isn't that
That's
something?
right.
Is it?
Yeah. It's all about me. It's like that meme of the person pointing at themselves in the mirror and they're like, you get in there and you make this about yourself.
Right.
Okay, so we're down to number 1 or number 3. Number 1, the myth ignores the long legacy of systemic racism. Zendaya Dirks from NPR.
NPR.
And number 3, Smug, you are correct, is the Dem. And that was AOC.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Will you read that one more time?
The Supreme Court is far overreaching their authority, and I believe, frankly, that we really need to be having conversations about judicial review as a check on the courts as well.
I mean, that is horrific that you've got elected officials who are saying we need a check on the court when the whole purpose of the Constitution is establishing the checks and balances as they are. They're like, we need another check.
Yeah.
But the I believe we need to. That's the giveaway. That's the tell. That's what should have told me that it was a Democrat. I thought number 1 was a Democrat simply because I know that the esteemed Michael Duncan's ability to hide the obvious behind something that you might not expect, and so I chose 1 because of that.
And you know, I have to say, it's a big deal that I won that, especially given that you are friends with all these people. I hang out with them constantly, and I still managed to overcome. Really happy to get that
An incredible victory, Smug. You really outdid yourself with that one. One more story that we got to hit here, fellas.
Yes, important, very important.
You know, I've been accused of being soft on the Orca Menace.
In the 5 stars today.
Yeah, you know, I know. I got a soft spot.
You have been soft on the killer whales. First
Killer
of all,
whales.
they're calling them orcas. You're using their talking points.
No, I'm using the language here of the Science Times. Let me read the headline here. Orca repeatedly attacked a yacht off the coast of Scotland. First attack in northern waters raises concerns of spreading trend.
Here we go.
They use the word orca. They're also trying to cover up the menace that is the killer whale.
The killer whales. And right here, I think this is a huge story. There's now no part of the world essentially safe from the menace of killer whales. Now off of the coast of Scotland, first attack in northern waters raises concerns of spreading trend. I think those concerns it's beyond concerns. We now have scientific evidence that the killer whales are trying to kill people. It's in their name. It's what they do. And we need to start going on the offense. Instead of being defensive, it's like every day we're hearing a story of another bunch of folks on a ship just getting attacked for absolutely no reason by killer whales. At what point are we going to stop being on defense and wondering who's going to be the next to die and get attacked by this menace and start going on the offense and saying, okay, we see this as a menace. Let's get the whalers out there. Let's get the harpoons out there. Let's tap into a renewable resource. Let's get the damn whales.
I totally agree with you, Smug, and we've talked about this a lot on the program in the past. But there are too many factions in our society who focus only on the animal. We here at the Variety Program focus on the people. We have an organization that is loosely affiliated with our show called People for the Ethical Treatment of People.
Do you think we need to set up a 501c3?
I think we should. I absolutely think we should. And we need to get the whalers out. We need to get the harpoons out. We need to sell the oil of these killer whales as a premium marketplace product. Can you imagine teaching your child to read whatever book you choose by the light of an oil that was from this whale who tried to kill your fellow
that's
man?
a memory that lasts a lifetime.
And they make perfume, ambergris, all the blubber, right? You can make perfumes. You can do all sorts of things.
And also just like the amount of meat. You know, you could feed the homeless if you. So
you could feed the homeless.
I got in trouble because I had a far left teacher in a science course, and so when we were writing our final paper on any, it had to be specifically on environmental science. We picked the topic. It was a huge portion of our grade. I did the math, and all these projections at the time of rising sea levels, I put together numbers of how many whales there are currently swimming in the oceans, right? And then their average volume. So if you were to kill all the whales, bring them onto land, chop them up, use oil and whatever, it offsets all the projections out there for rising sea levels. Like, this is the solution everyone can get behind.
It's the classic surface area to volume ratio.
And so, she gave me a terrible grade for that. But that's the thing, is they want to protect.
You're solving problems.
Yeah, they want to protect the animals when they are the problem. Well, you've got the killer whales trying to kill people.
We shouldn't be protecting them. Here, color from the article. I think this is fascinating. Wim Rutten, a retired Dutch physicist and captain of the yacht, expressed his fear in an interview to The Guardian of the powerful animal's loud breathing during the unsettling encounter. In the interview, the retired physicist and captain of the yacht described how the orca stayed behind the boat before disappearing and then returning at a faster speed, circling him.
They remember.
Rutten felt, quote, soft shocks created by the mammal as it made contact with the aluminum hull of the yacht. Rutten immediately made a connection to the recent orca attacks along the Spanish and Portuguese coast, particularly in the Strait of Gibraltar. They're learning.
They are learning, and one of the things that I feel like our government needs to do, and the government, obviously the Scottish government, in addition to mandating that you have life jackets on each of these boats, you need to have an adequate supply of cork on the boats so that you can just plug that blowhole. If it comes alongside, plug it.
I mean,
it's not coming back up.
I think this is harpoon time. Like, everyone.
Yeah, where's Captain Ahab when you need him?
If you have a boat out there on the water, if you're in the ocean at all, off the beaches, wherever you are, have a harpoon, at least a few on you, right? And it's time to fight back. It says right here in this article, last month alone, USA Today reported 20 orca, their killer whale, incidents in those waters. It says the majority of the recent killer whale attacks have been concentrated in the seas south of Spain. It says, but scientists suspect the recent trend of killer whale attacks on boats may be the result of learned behavior being spread within killer whale pods. They're teaching each other.
Yeah.
This is just terrorism.
I'm shocked they didn't blame climate change.
Yeah. That is honestly surprising.
The liberal media will look to absolutely every excuse that they can make for these killer animals that they can possibly come up with. They are, guys, just listen to me for 1 second. They are against people. the liberal media is against people.
They want to block the sun.
They want to block the sun. They want to stick up for the dog who killed its owner. They want to stick up for the hog who killed its butcher.
They don't want meat on our grills on the 4th of July.
They don't. And if you feel like the liberal media does not have your back as a human being, if you feel like they're against you, I want you to think of this. Call me Ishmael. Okay? This program has your back.
It's time. It's time to fight back.
What an incredible way to end today's show, fellas. I think we did it.
I think we did it. Outstanding work, everybody. Happy 4th of July for all our listeners. Absolute banger of an episode, if I may say so myself. Again, thank you so much to the minions, especially those subscribing on our YouTube, those hitting up our store.ruthlesspodcast.com for the merch. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.